A young girl is walking through a dark forest when she hears a rustling in the bushes. She is startled to see a large, furry creature with no head. The creature is coming towards her, and she is terrified. She tries to run away, but the creature is faster than she is. It catches her and kills her. It was 8 p.m. when I first saw the car monster. I was driving home from work, and I took the usual route. But as I turned the corner, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a car parked in the middle of the road, and it was just sitting there, motionless. But as I got closer, I could see that the car was not just motionless. It was also watching me. The headlights were on, and they were staring right at me. I could see the driver, but there was something wrong with him. He was just sitting there, staring at me, and his eyes were glowing red. I could see the outline of his body, but it was distorted, as if he was not really there. I could see his mouth moving, but I could not hear what he was saying. I was frozen with fear, and I could not move. I just sat there, staring at the car monster, until it finally drove away. The gay guy had always been a little weird. He was always the one to make the jokes, always the one to dress up in the outrageous costumes. But there was something different about him this year. He seemed off. No one could quite put their finger on it, but there was an air of menace about him that made everyone feel uneasy. He had always been a vegetarian, but this year he seemed to have developed a taste for meat. He would order steak at restaurants, and he was always asking to try new dishes that contained meat. It was like he was a different person. And then, one day, he snapped. He came into work dressed in a butcher's apron, covered in blood. He had a crazed look in his eyes, and he was carrying a cleaver. He went into the break room, where a group of his coworkers were chatting, and without saying a word, he began hacking them to pieces. It was a massacre. No one could stop him. He was like a madman, possessed by some sort of demon. Eventually the police arrived, but by that time it was too late. The gay guy had slaughtered nearly everyone in the office. The only thing that anyone could think was that the meat had finally gotten to him. It had driven him mad, and turned him into a killer. It was a dark and stormy night. Philip had just gotten home from work and was settling in for the evening. He was about to turn on the TV when he heard a knock at the door. Philip slowly got up to answer it, wondering who could be out in this weather. He looked through the peephole and saw a man standing there, soaked to the bone. Philip hesitated for a moment before opening the door. "Can I help you?" he asked. "Yes," the man said. "I'm looking for a place to stay for the night. My car broke down and I've been walking for miles. I'm freezing." Philip hesitated for a moment. He didn't want to let this man into his home, but he couldn't just leave him out in the cold. "Come in," he said. "I'll see if I can find you a towel." The man came in and Philip closed the door behind him. He led the man into the living room and offered him a seat. The man gratefully accepted and Philip went to get a towel. When he returned, he found the man had taken off his shoes and socks. Philip's eyes widened when he saw the man's feet. Instead of toes, he had long, thin fingers. "What happened to your feet?" he asked, horrified. "I was born this way," the man said. "My parents didn't know how to deal with it, so they gave me away." Philip couldn't imagine what it must be like to have fingers for toes. He tried not to stare as he handed the man the towel. "Thank you," the man said. "I'm sorry to imposition." "It's no problem," Philip said. "I have a spare bedroom you can use. Just make yourself at home." The man nodded and Philip showed him to the spare bedroom. He went to get some extra blankets and pillows for the man. When he returned, he found the man had already gotten into bed. He was lying on his side, facing the wall. "Good night," Philip said. "Good night," the man said. Philip went to his own room and got into bed. It was a dark, moonless night. The only sound was the soft rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. A figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing a eerie green in the darkness. It was the toe muncher, come to feast on its unsuspecting victim. The toe muncher crept closer, its mouth watering at the thought of a delicious meal. The human's toes would be a tasty treat, and it was eager to sink its teeth into them. The toe muncher lunged forward, its sharp teeth sinking into the human's flesh. The victim screamed in pain as the creature devoured its toes. One by one, blood flowed freely from the wounds, making the toe muncher's meal even more delicious. The toe muncher continued to feast until there was nothing left but bones. It licked its lips in satisfaction, before disappearing back into the shadows from whence it came. Logan Paul was just your average YouTuber. Until one day, he found a time machine. At first, he thought it would be amazing to use it to travel back in time and meet historical figures. But he soon realized that the time machine was cursed. Whenever he used it, he would end up in a dark, spooky world where he was being chased by horrifying monsters. He tried to warn people not to use the time machine, but no one would listen. Now, Logan is stuck in a never-ending cycle of being chased by monsters in a dark, spooky world. He knows that if he can just find the time machine and destroy it, he can break the curse and finally be free. But the time machine is well hidden, and Logan is running out of time. Cardi B was on a secret spy mission when she suddenly realized she was being followed. She turned around to see a dark figure looming over her. She tried to run, but the figure was faster, catching her and dragging her into the darkness. Cardi B struggled and screamed, but it was no use. The figure had her in its grasp and was not going to let her go. She was dragged into a dark room and thrown onto a cold, hard floor. The figure loomed over her, its face hidden in the shadows. Cardi B could feel the cold, sharp knife blade against her throat. She knew she was going to die. The figure began to speak in a cold, demonic voice. "You should have never come here, Cardi B. Now you will pay the ultimate price. The knife sliced across her throat and everything went black. The Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson Comedy Club for Aliens was a popular destination for extraterrestrial life forms, but one day, something went wrong. The aliens who visited the club began to act strange, exhibiting violent and erratic behavior. Soon, they began attacking and killing the humans who worked there. The few survivors barricaded themselves inside the club, trying to hold off the aliens for as long as possible. But it was only a matter of time before the aliens broke through and began slaughtering everyone inside. Now, the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson Comedy Club for Aliens is a bloody massacre site. A warning to any who would dare try to entertain these creatures. Beware the wrath of the aliens, for they will show no mercy. It was a dark, moonless night. The only sound was the crunching of leaves beneath Taylor Swift's feet as she walked along the path to her tour bus. She had been performing in town earlier that night and was now on her way back to the bus to sleep, before they had to travel to the next town on the tour. As she approached the bus, she could see that the lights were on inside. She was surprised, as she was sure she had turned them off before she left. She climbed aboard and went to the back to her bedroom. As she entered the room, she could see that something was not right. The furniture was overturned and the bed was slashed open. It was as if someone had been looking for something. Taylor's heart began to race as she realized that she was not alone on the bus. She turned to run, but it was too late. Someone grabbed her from behind, covering her mouth to stifle her screams. She was dragged kicking and struggling into the living room, where she saw the rest of her bandmates. They were all bound and gagged, their eyes wide with fear. In the center of the room sat a figure in a hooded cloak. Taylor could not see their face, but she could feel their cold, dead eyes boring into her. The figure spoke, their voice low and menacing. "I've been watching you, Taylor. I know what you've been up to. And now, you're going to pay." Taylor tried to scream, but the hand over her mouth was too tight. She was paralyzed with fear as the figure slowly approached her. The last thing she saw was the glint of a knife in the moonlight before everything went black. The dance-off was in full swing. The music was pumping, the lights were flashing, and the zombies were getting their groove on. But something was wrong. The zombies didn't look right. Their skin was pale and their eyes were sunken in. They looked like they were ready to collapse. The dance floor was littered with bodies. Some were twitching, others were still. Blood was everywhere. It was like a massacre. Then, the zombies started to attack. They went for the jugular, tearing into flesh with their teeth. The screams were deafening. People were running in all directions, trying to escape, but there was nowhere to go. The zombies were everywhere. They were relentless in their pursuit of human flesh. Those who weren't devoured were turned into zombies themselves. The virus was spreading like wildfire. Within hours, the entire city was overrun. The zombies were in control. Humanity was on the brink of extinction. And it all started with a dance-off. Kim Kardashian's new reality show, Ghost Hunting with Kim Kardashian, is set to premiere soon, and fans are already talking about how scared they are going to be. The show will follow Kim and her friends as they investigate haunted locations around the world, using the latest in ghost hunting technology. But some people are wondering if the show is really just a way for Kim to get more attention. "I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I know I don't want to see them," one fan said. "I'm going to be so scared watching this show," another said. But others are excited to see what Kim and her friends will find on their ghost hunting adventures. "I love ghost stories, and I can't wait to see what Kim and her friends find," one fan said. No matter what your opinion is, there's no denying that Ghost Hunting with Kim Kardashian is going to be one of the most talked about shows of the year. Will Smith's alien invasion stand-up act. The crowd is going wild. They're laughing, cheering, and clapping along with every joke Will Smith is making. They're loving every minute of his stand-up act. But little do they know, there's something far more sinister going on behind the scenes. As Will Smith cracks joke after joke, a team of aliens is secretly infiltrating the venue. They're using their advanced technology to cloak themselves from human sight. Slowly but surely, they're making their way towards the stage. The aliens have one goal: to abduct Will Smith and take him back to their home planet. They believe that his comedic genius can help them achieve world domination. As the aliens close in on their prey, the crowd is still none the wiser. They're too busy enjoying the show to notice the otherworldly creatures lurking in the shadows. But soon, the aliens will make their move. And when they do, there'll be no turning back. As Lady Gaga's fashion show in outer space began, the crowd of onlookers were shocked to see the models floating weightlessly in the air. But then, the music changed and the lights dimmed. Suddenly, the crowd was filled with a sense of dread. The models began to contort their bodies in unnatural ways. Their faces contorted into masks of terror. The crowd watched in horror as the models writhed in pain, their bodies contorting into impossible shapes. Then, from the darkness, something began to emerge. Large, black tentacles reached out towards the models, wrapping around their bodies and squeezing the life out of them. The crowd watched in terror as the models were slowly consumed by the dark entity. Slowly, the crowd began to back away. But it was too late. The dark entity had already reached out for them. Tentacles wrapped around their bodies, squeezing the life out of them. The last thing the crowd saw was the dark, gaping maw of the entity as it consumed them. It was the middle of the night, and the only sound was the soft rustle of the leaves in the gentle breeze. The moon was full and cast a pale light over the small soccer field. In the center of the field, a group of figures were gathered. They were all wearing black cloaks, and their faces were hidden in the shadows. One of the figures stepped forward. "Welcome, friends," he said in a deep, booming voice. "Tonight, we gather to play a game. A game of soccer." The other figures murmured in excitement. "But this is no ordinary game," the first figure continued. "For tonight, we will be playing for blood." The crowd erupted into cheers. "The rules are simple," the first figure said. "There are 2 teams of 5. The goal is to score as many goals as possible. However, each time a team scores, one of their players must be sacrificed. Their blood will be used to fuel the magic of the game." The crowd cheered even louder. "So, without further ado, let the game begin." Quote, the figures split into 2 teams and began to play. The game was fierce, and the score quickly began to climb. Every time a team scored, one of their players would be dragged off to the sidelines, where they would be slaughtered. Their blood would be smeared on the soccer ball, and the game would continue. The ground was slick with blood, and the air was thick with the smell of death. The crowd was wild with excitement, cheering and jeering with each goal. The game went on for hours. The body count continued to rise, until finally, one team emerged victorious. The crowd went wild, cheering and clapping. The winning team approached the sidelines, where the losing team lay in a bloody heap. One by one, they began to feed on the losing team's players, tearing them apart with their sharp teeth. The losing team's screams echoed through the night, until finally, they were all dead. The winning team had won the game. But at what cost? This was no ordinary game. This was a game of blood and death. This was a game where only the strongest could survive. This was a game where the weak would be mercilessly slaughtered.
So a lot of people are saying
The animals on Oprah's talk show were always a bit off. They would say things that didn't make sense. And sometimes they would even laugh in a way that sounded almost human. But the audience loved them. And Oprah always seemed to enjoy their company. One day, however, things took a turn for the worse. The animals started acting even stranger than usual. They hissed and growled at the audience, and their eyes seemed to glow red in the darkness of the studio. Oprah tried to calm them down, but it was no use. Then, without warning, the animals attacked. They tore through the studio, biting and clawing at anyone they could get their hands on. The audience screamed in terror as they tried to flee the room. Some people managed to make it out alive, but many others were not so lucky. The animals were relentless in their attack, and soon the studio was filled with blood and death. As the sun rose the next day, the only thing that could be heard was the sound of the animals, still laughing in that eerie, human way. The first human colony on Mars was established in 2040. It was a joint effort by the United States, Russia, China, and the European Union. The colony was named after its founder, Elon Musk. The colony was intended to be a permanent settlement, but within a few years, strange things began happening. The colonists began to experience terrifying nightmares. They would see monsters and ghosts in their dreams, and some of them even saw the faces of their loved ones in their dreams. Begging for help. The colonists also began to see strange things happening around the colony. Lights would flicker on and off, and strange noises would be heard in the distance. Some of the colonists even reported seeing ghosts. The colony's psychologist, Dr. Jessica Ryan, began to investigate the reports of the strange occurrences. She soon discovered that the colony was built on top of an ancient Martian graveyard. The colonists were unknowingly living on top of the graves of the Martian dead. Dr. Ryan's investigation led her to believe that the ghosts of the Martian dead were haunting the colony. She warned the colonists that they were in danger, but they didn't believe her. Then, one night, the ghosts attacked. They entered the colonists' homes and killed them in their sleep. The colony was destroyed and everyone was killed. Now, the ghosts of the Martian dead haunt the colony. Anyone who dares to enter is doomed to die. The clock struck midnight and Ariana Grande began to sing. She had been practicing for this moment all week long and she was determined to win the contest. The prize was a recording contract with a major label and she was not going to let anything stand in her way. As she sang, she could feel the presence of the ghosts in the room. They were all gathered around her, watching her intently. She could feel their cold, icy breath on her skin and she knew they were waiting for her to make a mistake. She sang flawlessly for the first few minutes. But then she felt something touch her foot. It was one of the ghosts, trying to trip her up. She stumbled, but quickly regained her composure and continued to sing. The ghosts were now getting more aggressive. They were throwing things at her, trying to distract her, but she was not going to let them win. She continued to sing, even as the ghosts became more and more violent. Suddenly, one of the ghosts grabbed her throat and started to choke her. Ariana could feel her life force being drained away and she knew she was going to die if she didn't do something. She reached deep down inside herself and found the strength to keep singing. The ghost was forced to release her and she took a deep breath. She was not going to let the ghosts win. She was going to finish the song and win the contest. The clock struck midnight and Ariana Grande finished her song. She had won the contest and the recording contract. But she knew that the ghosts would be back. They would never let her rest. She would have to keep singing forever. It was a dark, moonless night. The only sound that could be heard was the soft rustling of the trees in the gentle breeze. A small group of people huddled around a campfire, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. They were laughing and joking, telling stories and sharing memories. But there was one member of the group who was not participating in the festivities. He sat off to the side, his arms crossed and a scowl on his face. His name was Justin Bieber. Justin was a young man who had always been different. He was born with a strange affliction that caused his body to change into that of a wolf whenever there was a full moon. At first, his parents had tried to keep it a secret, but eventually word had gotten out. People were scared of him, and he was ridiculed and ostracized by the community. He had been forced to leave his home and live in the forest. away from society. But Justin was not alone. He had found others like him, others who shared his curse. They had formed a pack, and together they roamed the forest, hunting and scavenging to survive. They were outcasts, but they were family. Tonight, Justin was feeling particularly restless. He had been pacing back and forth for hours, unable to sit still or focus on anything. He could feel the change coming, and he knew that he wouldn't be able to control himself when it did. He had to get away from the others before he hurt them. He turned and sprinted into the forest, his body starting to change as he ran. His clothes ripped as his muscles swelled and his bones lengthened. His face elongated into a snout, and his teeth became sharp fangs. He could hear the others following him, but he didn't dare look back. He ran for miles, until he couldn't run any further. He collapsed to the ground, his body racked with pain. The change was almost complete, and he could feel the wolf taking over. He fought against it with all his strength, but it was pointless. The wolf was in control now. He stood up on all fours and let out a long, mournful howl. Then he turned and ran into the night, his pack following close behind. Miley Cyrus was having the time of her life at the amusement park. She went on all the rides and ate all the cotton candy she could find. She was especially excited to go on the haunted roller coaster. She had heard so many stories about how scary it was, and she couldn't wait to experience it for herself. As she got in line for the ride, she started to get a bit scared. She could hear the screams of the people who were already on the ride, and she started to second guess getting on. But she was determined to do it, and she got on the ride. As the ride started, she realized that it was even more terrifying than she had thought. The coaster went through dark tunnels and around sharp turns. She could feel her heart racing, and she was sure she was going to die. At one point, the coaster stopped and Miley thought she was going to be stuck there forever. But then it started moving again and she was relieved. When the ride finally ended, Miley was so relieved. She had never been so scared in her life, and she vowed to never go on the ride again. It was the middle of the night, and all was quiet. Too quiet. Kevin Hart's comedy special for haunted houses was playing on the TV, and the laughter echoing through the empty house was eerie. The only other sound was the occasional creak of the floorboards. Suddenly, there was a loud crash. Something was coming through the window. Kevin Hart jumped up from the couch, his heart racing. He could see a dark figure standing outside, silhouetted by the moonlight. The figure was taller than a man, and it had long, sharp claws. Kevin knew he had to act fast. He ran to the door and tried to open it, but it was jammed shut. The figure was coming closer, and Kevin could see its red eyes gleaming. He was trapped. There was nowhere to hide. The figure was almost upon him, and Kevin could see the hunger in its eyes. He knew he was going to die. Then, at the last moment, the figure stopped. It turned and looked at the TV, where Kevin's comedy special was still playing. And then, to Kevin's amazement, the figure started to laugh. It was a deep, guttural laugh, and it sent chills down Kevin's spine. The figure turned back to Kevin, and its eyes softened. It reached out a claw and touched Kevin's cheek, almost tenderly. And then it was gone. Vanishing into the night, Kevin was left alone, shaken but alive. He would never forget that night, and the laughter that had saved his life. The crowd was electric as they waited for their favorite pop star to take the stage. But something was wrong. The concert was supposed to start an hour ago, and there was no sign of Rihanna. The crowd began to get restless, and some even began to leave. Suddenly, the lights went out. A hush fell over the crowd. Then, a blood-curdling scream pierced the darkness. The crowd panicked and tried to flee, but the exits were all blocked. They were trapped. Then, a figure appeared on stage. It was Rihanna, but she looked different. Her eyes were glowing red, and her skin was pale. She opened her mouth to speak, and her voice was like a demon's. "Welcome, my children," she hissed. "I have been waiting for you." The crowd gasped in terror as they realized what was happening. Rihanna was a demon, and they were all going to die. The demon Rihanna then began to sing, and the crowd felt a strange power emanating from her voice. They were compelled to dance, and as they did, they felt their life force being sucked out of them. Some managed to break free from the spell, but it was too late. The demon had already taken too much from them. Their souls were lost forever. Tom Hanks was on a zombie-infested island, and he was all alone. The zombies were everywhere, and they were coming for him. He had nowhere to hide, and no way to escape. He was going to die. Tom Hanks could hear the zombies coming for him. They were getting closer and closer. He was terrified. He didn't know what to do. He was all alone on this island, and there was no way to escape. The zombies were getting closer and closer, and he knew he was going to die. He could see the zombies now. They were coming for him, and there was nothing he could do. He was going to die. It was a dark and stormy night. Billie Eilish was shooting her new music video for her song, Alien. She was in a remote location, and the crew was setting up the shots. It was getting late, and Billie was getting tired. Suddenly, they heard a strange noise. It sounded like something was moving around in the bushes. Billie's heart started to race. She was scared. The crew started to get scared too. They grabbed their things and ran to the car. But it was too late. Something was coming after them. They could see its eyes glowing in the dark. It was a monster. It was coming after them. They all ran for their lives. But the monster was too fast. It caught up to them and killed them all. Billie Eilish's music video shoot ended in tragedy that night. The monster was never found, and the song, Alien, would become her most famous and haunting work. Gordon Ramsay's cooking show for vampires was a huge hit. The show was full of suspense, horror, and of course, delicious food. The vampires loved it. and Gordon Ramsay loved the attention. But one day, something went wrong. Gordon Ramsay started to act strange. He would hiss and growl at the vampires, and his eyes would turn red. The vampires were scared, and they started to think that maybe Gordon Ramsay was a vampire himself. One night, Gordon Ramsay invited all of the vampires to his house for a special dinner party. The vampires were excited, but they were also scared. They all knew that something was wrong with Gordon Ramsay, but they didn't know what it was. At the dinner party, Gordon Ramsay served them all a delicious meal. But then, he started to change. His eyes turned red, and his fangs started to grow. The vampires were terrified, and they all started to run. But it was too late. Gordon Ramsay was a vampire, and he was hungry. He started to chase the vampires, and he caught them one by one. He sucked their blood, and he loved it. The vampires were all dead, and Gordon Ramsay was the only one left. He had finally gotten his revenge on the vampires, and he loved it. One day, Jennifer Lawrence was walking around her house when she suddenly felt something cold and slimy wrap around her leg. She looked down and saw a ghost. The ghost was transparent and had a wicked grin on its face. Jennifer screamed and tried to run away, but the ghost was too fast. It grabbed her by the throat and started to choke her. Jennifer struggled and tried to fight back, but it was no use. The ghost was too strong. Finally, she passed out. When she woke up, she was in a dark, dank dungeon. The only light came from a flickering candle that was sitting on a table in the middle of the room. Jennifer tried to stand up, but her legs were weak and she fell to the ground. She looked around and saw that she was surrounded by ghosts. They were all leering at her, as if they were enjoying her terror. Jennifer tried to scream, but no sound would come out. Suddenly, one of the ghosts floated towards her. The Drake's Haunted Mansion music album is a truly horrifying experience. From the eerie opening notes of the first track, The Haunted Mansion, to the final, bone-chilling chords of The End, this album is guaranteed to send shivers down your spine. The album tells the story of a group of friends who visit the Drake Mansion, a notoriously haunted house. As they explore the mansion, they begin to realize that something is not quite right. The further they go, the more they realize that they are not alone in the house. They are being watched and followed by something sinister. As the album progresses, the friends find themselves in increasingly dangerous situations, until they are finally faced with the ultimate terror, a confrontation with the evil spirits that haunt the Drake Mansion. This album is not for the faint of heart. If you're looking for a truly frightening experience, look no further than the Drake's Haunted Mansion music album. The Oprah Winfrey Show was once the most popular daytime television program in America. But that was before the time-traveling book club came to town. Now, every night, Oprah and her guests travel back in time to different eras and locations, where they discuss the books that they've read. But there's something very strange about the time-traveling book club. For one thing, They always seem to choose books that are just a little bit too scary for their own good. And for another, the members of the club always seem to disappear soon after they join. No one knows what happened to them. But there are rumors. Some say that the club is actually a portal to another world, where demons and monsters lurk in the shadows. Others say that the club is a front for a secret society that sacrifices its members to some dark god. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. The time-traveling book club is not to be messed with. It was a dark and stormy night. The wind was howling and the rain was pouring down. Suddenly, there was a bright light in the sky. It was a UFO. The aliens were coming to get Bianca Copyright. They wanted to take her away to their home planet to be their queen. But Bianca Copyright was not going to go down without a fight. It was a dark and stormy night. She would battle the aliens and win. The aliens were getting closer and closer. Bianca Copyright could see their evil eyes glaring at her. She was ready to fight. She would not let them take her without a fight. The aliens were almost upon her. Bianca Copyright started to sing and dance. She was using her powers to fight them off. The aliens were getting weaker and weaker. They could not stand up to her power. Finally, they were defeated. LeBron James's zombie basketball tournament was a gruesome event that no one could have ever imagined. The tournament was held in a secret location, deep in the woods, and it was invite only. The only way to get an invite was to be a top player in the NBA. The tournament was a bloodbath. The rules were simple: kill or be killed. There was no other way out. The players had to fight their way through a horde of zombies to make it to the final round. And in the final round, they had to face off against LeBron James himself. The winner of the tournament would be crowned the Zombie King, and would be given a huge cash prize. But no one ever made it to the final round. The zombies were too strong, and they always managed to kill the players before they could make it that far. The tournament was a nightmare. It was a brutal, gruesome event that left many players dead. And it was all because of LeBron James. The Ellen DeGeneres Show is no stranger to guests with strange stories. But when a woman claiming to be a medium came on the show to talk about the time she spent in a haunted house, everyone was skeptical. But as she began to describe the things she saw and heard in the house, it became clear that this was no joke. The woman, who we'll call Sarah, said that she and her husband had bought the house with the intention of fixing it up and flipping it. But from the moment they moved in, they knew something was wrong. The house was always cold, no matter how high they turned up the heat, and strange noises echoed through the halls at night. They tried to ignore it at first, but as the days went on, the feeling that they were being watched grew stronger and stronger. Sarah began to see shadows out of the corner of her eye, and her husband would often find her in a trance-like state, staring off into space. It was after one particularly sleepless night that they decided they'd had enough. Sarah's husband called a priest to come and bless the house. But as soon as he stepped inside, He was attacked by an unseen force. He barely made it out alive. And the priest refused to step foot in the house again. That's when Sarah and her husband knew they had to get out. They packed up their things and left in the middle of the night, never looking back. Since then, they've heard from others who have had similar experiences in the house. Some say it's haunted by the spirit of a woman who was brutally murdered there, while others say it's the home of a demonic entity that is feeding off the fear of those who enter. Whatever the case may be, one thing is for sure: the house is evil, and anyone who goes inside is in for a night of terror they'll never forget. Tom Cruise's mission. Haunted cruise ship. It was a dark and stormy night. The waves were high and the wind was howling. The passengers on the cruise ship were getting nervous. Suddenly, there was a loud crash. The ship had hit something. It was a reef. The ship was sinking. The passengers started to panic. They were all going to die. But then, something even more horrifying happened. The ship was haunted. Ghosts started to appear. They were moaning and wailing. The passengers were terrified. They didn't know what to do. Then, Tom Cruise appeared. He was the captain of the ship. He had come to save them. But the ghosts were too strong. They were dragging the passengers down to the depths of the ocean. Tom Cruise was their only hope. It was a dark, moonless night. The only sound was the rustling of the trees in the gentle breeze. Suddenly, there was a loud crash. The earth trembled and shook. Trees toppled over and houses crumbled. People screamed in terror as they ran for their lives. An alien spaceship had landed in the middle of the town. Huge, green, slimy creatures emerged from the ship. They were armed with laser guns and they began to shoot at the people. They were like nothing anyone had ever seen before. The creatures were herding the people into a large net. They were laughing and joking as they did so. They seemed to be enjoying themselves. The people were terrified. They had no idea what was going to happen to them. The aliens took the people to their ship and put them into cages. They were going to use them for food. The people screamed and begged for mercy, but the aliens just laughed. They were going to enjoy their meal. It was a dark and stormy night. Mark Zuckerberg was alone in his house, working on his latest project, a virtual reality world that he could control and manipulate at will. He had been working on it for months, and it was almost finished. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Mark got up to answer it, and there was nobody there. He looked around, but there was nobody in sight. He shrugged and went back to work. But the knock came again. This time, when he opened the door, there was a figure standing there. It was a ghostly figure, clad in a hooded cloak. The figure spoke in a deep, haunting voice. "Mark Zuckerberg, your time is up. You have been messing with things that you should not have been. Now you must pay the price." Mark tried to run, but the figure was faster. It grabbed him and pulled him into the virtual reality world that he had created. There, Mark was confronted with all of his worst fears. He was chased by monsters, haunted by ghosts, and tortured by demons. He begged for mercy, but the figure only laughed. Finally, Mark was cornered by the figure. It removed its hood, revealing its hideous face. Then, it reached out and grabbed Mark's head, crushing it like a grape. Mark's lifeless body slumped to the ground as the figure vanished into the darkness. His virtual reality world was now a living nightmare, and anyone who entered it would be subjected to the same fate. Once upon a time, there was a cursed candy wonderland that Katy Perry built. All of the children who came here would get sick and die. But one day, a little girl named Ashley discovered the secret to the curse. She found a hidden room full of dead children's bodies. And in the center of the room was a big candy machine. Ashley figured out that the machine was the source of the curse. She destroyed the machine and freed the children's souls. But the candy machine had one last trick up its sleeve. It created a giant candy monster that chased Ashley through the wonderland. She finally destroyed the monster and saved the day. But the candy machine was never found. And the curse still exists to this day. The sun had been beating down mercilessly on the asphalt for hours, baking the blacktop until it was almost too hot to stand on. The heat was so intense that the pavement seemed to shimmer and dance in the hazy air. At long last, the sun began to dip below the horizon, and the heat began to dissipate slightly. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared, a group of figures emerged from the shadows. They were a motley crew, clad in leather and denim, their faces hidden behind helmets and bandanas. They were the sort of people that most folks would cross the street to avoid. But there was something different about this group, something sinister. As they revved their engines and prepared to take off, it became clear that they were not human. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness, and their teeth were sharpened into long, deadly fangs. They were vampires, and they were out for blood. The vampires roared off into the night, their bikes leaving trails of fire in their wake. They were headed for the nearest town, where they would feast on the unsuspecting residents. The townspeople had no idea what was coming for them. They would soon be facing their worst nightmare come to life. There would be no escape from the vampire motorcycle gang. Rihanna's zombie fashion line is a new line of clothing that is perfect for anyone who wants to look their best while they're undead. The line includes a variety of different styles, all of which are designed to make you look like a zombie. Whether you're looking for a new outfit to wear to your next zombie apocalypse or you just want to add a little bit of edge to your wardrobe, Rihanna's zombie fashion line has something for you. The line was created by Rihanna herself, who is a big fan of zombies. She wanted to create a line of clothing that would allow people to express their inner zombie, while still looking their best. The line includes a variety of different items, including t-shirts, dresses, pants, and even shoes. All of the items in the line are made from high-quality materials and are designed to last. If you're looking for a new way to express your inner zombie, look no further than Rihanna's zombie fashion line. With a variety of different styles to choose from, you're sure to find the perfect outfit for you. Jeff Bezos' haunted space expedition. It was supposed to be a historic space expedition, the first ever manned mission to Mars. But something went wrong, terribly wrong. The ship was hit by a massive meteorite, and all communication was lost for weeks. The crew floated aimlessly in space, with no hope of rescue. And then, things started to get really strange. The ship's computer began behaving erratically, and the crew started seeing things. Terrible, horrifying things. Somehow, the ship had become haunted, possessed by some evil force. The crew was driven insane by the terror. And one by one, they began to kill each other. And then, there was only one survivor left. Jeff Bezos, the billionaire founder of Amazon. The man who had bankrolled the entire expedition. The only one left alive to tell the tale. A tale of terror, madness, and death. A tale of the haunted space expedition. The full moon was high in the sky, casting an eerie light over the forest. The trees swayed in the wind, creating a sinister atmosphere. In the distance, a wolf howled. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the sound of laughter. Two figures emerged from the shadows, both clad in black. They began to circle each other, their eyes shining with excitement. The taller of the two spoke first. "I challenge you to a dance-off, werewolf style." Quote. The other figure, a shorter, thinner man, grinned. "You're on." Quote. The two began to move, their bodies contorting in strange ways. The taller man's limbs elongated and his body began to sprout fur. The other man's eyes turned red and his teeth sharpened into fangs. As the two danced, they grew more and more ferocious. The taller man's transformation was almost complete, and the other man's eyes were dripping with blood. The dance-off reached its climax when the two leapt at each other, their claws and teeth bared. They fought ferociously, tearing at each other with all their strength. The taller man finally emerged victorious, his opponent's lifeless body lying at his feet. He let out a howl of triumph, the sound echoing through the forest. The moonlight glinted off his fur as he turned and disappeared into the darkness. Selena Gomez's alien romance movie. The aliens came to Earth seeking a new home. They were drawn to our planet by the presence of water and the abundance of life. But when they arrived, they found that the planet was already inhabited by an intelligent species, humans. The aliens were not content to share the planet with us, and so they began to wage war. For years they fought, and the humans fought back with all their might. But we were no match for their advanced technology and weaponry. The aliens began to systematically exterminate the human race. They would abduct people from their homes in the middle of the night, and take them away to who knows where. No one ever saw their loved ones again. The aliens were ruthless in their destruction of humanity. They wanted to make sure that we would never again pose a threat to them. And so they exterminated us, down to the last man, woman, and child. Now the aliens rule the Earth. Our planet is theirs, and they have made it a cold, dark place. There is no sunlight, no happiness, no hope. We are nothing but slaves to them, and our only purpose is to serve them. We live in fear of their wrath. We cower in the darkness, praying that they will not find us. But we know that they are always watching, and that one day they will come for us. We can only hope that they will show us mercy. But deep down, we know that they will not. Will Smith's time-traveling buddy cop movie. It was the middle of the night, and I was home alone. I was bored, so I decided to watch a movie. I found a movie called Will Smith's Time-Traveling Buddy Cop Movie. I had never heard of it, but it sounded interesting. I put the movie in, and it started with Will Smith and his partner investigating a crime scene. They found a dead body, and Will's partner said that it looked like the work of a serial killer. Will didn't believe him, but he decided to investigate anyway. Will and his partner went to the first victim's house, and they found out that she had been killed in her sleep. Will's partner said that the killer must have been someone she knew, because there was no sign of forced entry. Will and his partner then went to the second victim's house, and they found out that she had also been killed in her sleep. Will's partner said that the killer must have been someone she knew, because there was no sign of forced entry. Will and his partner then went to the third victim's house, and they found out that she had also been killed in her sleep. Will's partner said that the killer must have been someone she knew, because there was no sign of forced entry. Will and his partner then went to the fourth victim's house, and they found out that she had also been killed in her sleep. Will's partner said that the killer must have been someone she knew, because there was no sign of forced entry. Will and his partner then went to the fifth victim's house, and they found out that she had also been killed in her sleep. Will's partner said that the killer must have been someone she knew, because there was no sign of forced entry. Will and his partner then went to the sixth victim's house, and they found out that she had also been killed in her sleep. Will's partner said that the killer must have been someone she knew, because there was no sign of forced entry. Will and his partner then went to the seventh victim's house, and they found out that she had also been killed in her sleep. Will's partner said that the killer must have been someone she knew, because there was no sign of forced entry. Welcome to Ellen DeGeneres' Ghostly Game Show. In this game, we'll be testing your knowledge of all things ghostly. Are you ready to play? Quote, the audience member nodded eagerly, excited to be a part of the show. Great. Our first question is, what is a ghost? Quote, the contestant hesitated. It was a dark and stormy night. Philip had been driving home from work, and was now about an hour away from his house. He had made it the last few miles, but was now in the throes of a full-blown panic attack. His breaths came in short gasps and his heart was pounding so hard. It felt like it was trying to escape his chest. He pulled to the side of the road, scattering gravel, and tried to calm himself. He closed his eyes and took several deep breaths before starting the car. He crept along the road, his car the only light in a wide and dark world. The rain continued to beat against the windshield like the footsteps of some unseen thing. Suddenly, the car skidded on the wet pavement and Philip saw something large and dark moving in the headlights. He hit the brakes and the car came to a stop just inches from the thing. It was an alligator, its eyes glowing an eerie green in the light. The alligator hissed and snapped its jaws at Philip, who sat frozen in terror. Then, with a sickening thud, the alligator slammed into the side of the car, denting the metal. Philip screamed and hit the gas. Careening down the road, he could hear the alligator thrashing around in the trunk, its tail whipping back and forth. The car swerved and Philip fought to keep control. He looked in the rearview mirror and saw the alligator's head poking out of the trunk. Its mouth was open wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth. The alligator hissed and snapped at Philip, who screamed and hit the gas harder. The car careened off the road and into a ditch. The alligator was thrown from the trunk and lay still on the ground. Philip sat in the car, his heart pounding, and tried to calm himself. He was safe, for now, but he knew the alligator was out there, waiting for him. He would have to be careful from now on. He would have to watch out for the zombie alligator. The old house was said to be haunted, but nobody knew for sure, until one night, a young couple decided to investigate. They went to the house and entered through the front door. Immediately, they felt a cold presence. They heard a noise upstairs and decided to investigate. They went upstairs and found a room with a red light. Inside, they found a woman lying on the bed. She was naked and her body was covered in blood. The couple didn't know what to do. They turned to leave and the woman suddenly sat up. She looked at them with a hunger in her eyes. The couple ran for their lives, but they didn't make it out alive. The woman caught them and killed them. Their bodies were never found. Elon Musk sells Twitter to Bill Gates. Gates then proceeds to use Twitter to launch a worldwide campaign of terror. He tweets out messages of death and destruction, and anyone who dares to oppose him is immediately met with a barrage of vile abuse. Twitter quickly becomes a platform for Gates to share his dark vision for the future. And the world is soon plunged into darkness. Gates revels in his newfound power, and the Twitterverse becomes a place of nightmares. The once lively social media platform is now a tool for Gates to control the masses. He spreads his message of hate and bigotry, and anyone who dares to stand up to him is met with swift and brutal retribution. The world is plunged into darkness, and there seems to be no hope of escape. Gates has taken over Twitter, and he is using it to control the minds of the masses. We are all living in his dark vision for the future, and there is no escape. Crazy Dave was always a bit odd, but when he started talking to the plants, people really began to worry. They thought he was crazy, but he knew things that they didn't. He knew that the plants were alive, and he knew that they were planning to take over the world. One day, Crazy Dave went into the garden and started talking to the plants. They were whispering to him, telling him their plans. They were going to take over the world and make all humans their slaves. Crazy Dave laughed and told them they were crazy. But the plants just smiled and kept whispering to him. Crazy Dave knew he had to stop the plants. But he didn't know how. He thought and thought, but he couldn't come up with a plan. Then, one day, he had an idea. He would use the power of the sun to destroy the plants. He went into the garden and gathered all the plants. He tied them together and placed them in the middle of the garden. Then he went and got a magnifying glass and placed it in the sun. The rays of the sun focused through the glass and onto the plants. They started to smoke and then they burst into flames. The plants were destroyed and the world was saved. But Crazy Dave knew that the plants would be back. He would have to be always on guard, always ready to fight them, because he knew that one day, they would take over the world, and he would be the only one who could stop them. The haunted snake. It was a dark and stormy night. Philip had been driving home from work, and was now about an hour away from his house. He had made it the last few miles, but was now in the throes of a full-blown panic attack. His breaths came in short gasps and his heart was pounding so hard. It felt like it was trying to escape his chest. He pulled to the side of the road, scattering gravel, and tried to calm himself. He closed his eyes and took several deep breaths before starting the car. He crept along the road, his car the only light in a wide and dark world. The rain continued to beat against the windshield like the footsteps of some unseen thing. Suddenly, Philip's car stalled and he cursed under his breath. He tried to start it again, but it was no use. He got out of the car, and immediately regretted it. The wind was howling and the rain was coming down so hard. He could barely see. He tried to orient himself, but it was impossible. He had no idea where he was or how to get back to his car. He started walking, hoping to find a road or some other sign of civilization. After what felt like hours, Philip came to a fork in the road. He had no idea which way to go. He stood there for a moment, undecided, when he heard a noise behind him. He turned around and saw a large snake slithering towards him. He froze in fear, unable to move. The snake came closer and closer until it was right in front of him. It looked him in the eye and then opened its mouth, revealing long, sharp fangs. Philip knew he was going to die. The snake lunged at him and he felt its teeth sink into his flesh. He screamed in pain as the snake began to coil around him, constricting him. The pain was unbearable and he could feel his life slipping away. He knew this was the end. As he felt himself losing consciousness, he saw the snake's eyes change. They went from cold and lifeless to something else, something almost human. Philip awoke with a start. He was lying in his car, parked on the side of the road. He could see his house in the distance. He must have fallen asleep and driven home on autopilot. He shook his head, trying to clear it. The tiger was always a gentle creature, until the day it was possessed by a demon. The tiger now roams the forest, stalking and killing any living thing it comes across. The tiger is now a fearsome beast, and no one knows how to stop it. The cursed shark was once a normal shark, swimming in the ocean and minding its own business. But one day, it was bitten by a radioactive fish and became cursed. Now, the shark is a giant, mutated monster that terrorizes the seas. It is huge and ferocious, with razor-sharp teeth and glowing red eyes. It is feared by all who see it, and it seems to enjoy the terror it causes. The cursed shark is relentless in its pursuit of prey, and no one is safe from its wrath. A howling coyote woke me from a dead sleep. It was a eerie, blood-curdling sound that sent a chill down my spine. I lay there frozen in fear, unsure of what to do. The howling continued, getting closer and closer until it sounded like it was right outside my window. I slowly got out of bed, heart racing, and peeked out the window. What I saw was something out of a nightmare. The coyote was huge, twice the size of a normal coyote, with glowing red eyes. It was staring right at me, and it looked angry. I quickly backed away from the window and grabbed my phone, trying to call for help, but there was no service. I was completely alone and vulnerable. The coyote began to howl again, this time louder and more menacing than before. It sounded like it was right inside the house now. I could hear it scratching and clawing at the door, trying to get in. I knew I was in trouble. There was no way I could fight off this creature. I could only hide and hope it would eventually go away. I crawled into a closet and huddled in the corner, trying to make myself as small as possible. I could hear the coyote tearing through the house, destroying everything in its path. It was getting closer and closer to the closet. I held my breath, praying for it to pass me by, but it didn't. The door to the closet burst open and the coyote lunged at me. I screamed as its teeth sunk into my flesh. Then everything went dark. When the sun goes down, the scorpions come out to hunt. They are silent, deadly predators, stalking their prey in the darkness. Their sting is venomous, and their claws are sharp. They are feared by all who know of them. When night falls, the scorpions come out to hunt. They are silent, deadly predators, stalking their prey in the darkness. Their sting is venomous, and their claws are sharp. They are feared by all who know of them. They hunt in the shadows, stalking their prey. They are patient, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When they strike, their victim is paralyzed by fear, and their venomous sting is deadly. The scorpions are feared by all who know of them. They are silent, deadly predators, and their sting is venomous. If you are unfortunate enough to cross their path, you will be their next victim. It was a dark, moonless night. Enough light shone from the porch light to show the broken coat hanger that stuck out of the porch stair rail. Lily sighed and wrapped her shawl around her other arm, picking her way from the driveway to the porch. Just as she touched the railing, she felt something land on her head. She shrieked and swatted at her hair, expecting to find a spider. Her hand came away covered in blood. Frantically, She looked around for the source of the attack. There, in the shadows, she saw a huge, furry spider the size of a dinner plate. It was rearing up, ready to strike again. Lily screamed and ran for the door, fumbling with the keys. She could hear the spider scuttling after her, its claws clicking on the porch floor. She threw open the door and slammed it shut behind her, pressing her back against it and panting in terror. She could hear the spider scratching at the door, trying to get in. Lily knew she was safe for now, but she had no idea how she was going to get rid of the monster that was now lurking outside her door. One dark, moonless night, an owl flew into the window of a house. The family that lived there was asleep, so the owl went into the kitchen and began to eat the food that was there. The owl ate and ate until it was full. Then it flew back out the window. But the next night, the owl returned, and the night after that, the family began to feel as though they were being watched, and they were scared. They started to leave food out for the owl, but it never seemed to be enough. The owl began to haunt their dreams, and they knew that it was only a matter of time before it killed them. The python was a cursed creature, born of black magic and evil intent. It was said that those who looked upon its hideous visage would be cursed for eternity. The python was relentless in its pursuit of prey, and would not rest until it had devoured its victim whole. Those unfortunate enough to cross its path would be subjected to its unending hunger, and would feel the full force of its wrath. The python was created by a dark wizard, who used its power to terrorize the land. The wizard enjoyed watching as the python devoured its victims, their screams of agony filling the air. The wizard would often use the python to torture and kill those who dared to cross him. The python was feared by all who knew of its existence, and many would go to great lengths to avoid its path. But the python was relentless, and would not be denied its prey. Eventually, it would find its way to them, and they would meet their doom. The raccoon was always lurking in the shadows, watching. It was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when it did, it would be ruthless. The hapless victim would never see it coming. The raccoon was known to be a master of disguise. It could make itself look like anything it wanted, and it liked to use this power to toy with its victims. It would take on the appearance of their worst fears and haunt them until they were driven insane. No one knew what had happened to the raccoon. Some said it was cursed. Others said it was possessed. But whatever the case may be, it was definitely not to be messed with. Those who crossed its path often found themselves regretting it. The raccoon was a spiteful creature and liked nothing more than to cause misery. It was said that it could even kill with just a glance. So if you see a raccoon lurking in the shadows, beware. It may look harmless, but it is definitely not. It is a creature of pure evil, and it will stop at nothing to get what it wants. One day, a vulture was possessed by a demon. The demon made the vulture fly into a window of a house and attack a family. The vulture scratched the mother's face and she bled to death. The vulture then flew into the father's room and pecked his eyes out. The vulture flew into the children's room and killed them. The vulture flew into the kitchen and killed the family's dog. The vulture then flew away. The cursed Komodo dragon. There was once a cursed Komodo dragon who terrorized the villagers of a small town. The dragon would often attack people, and no one could stop it. One day, the dragon attacked a young girl and her family. The girl's father tried to fight off the dragon, but it was too strong. The girl's mother grabbed her and ran away, but the dragon caught up to them and killed them both. The girl was the only one who survived. The girl was traumatized by the attack and vowed to get revenge on the dragon. She trained hard and became a great warrior. She also learned how to use magic. One day, she confronted the dragon and defeated it. The villagers were relieved and thanked the girl for saving them. The zombie anaconda was once a normal snake, until it was bitten by a zombie. Now, it is a fearsome creature that preys on the living. It is said that the zombie anaconda can grow to be over 100 feet long, and it is not uncommon for it to kill and eat humans. The Erie eagle was once a beautiful bird, but now, it is a creature of the night, a harbinger of death. It preys on the weak and the innocent, luring them with its eerie cries. It is said that if you hear the Erie eagle's cry, you will die within days. The Erie eagle is a fearsome creature, its eyes glowing red in the darkness. It is said that the eagle is cursed, and that it will bring death and destruction to all who cross its path. The ghost shark was a creature that was rumored to haunt the waters off the coast of Japan. It was said to be a giant shark that was translucent and could pass through solid objects. Sailors would tell tales of seeing the ghost shark swimming through the hulls of their ships, or appearing suddenly in the middle of the ocean. Some say that the ghost shark is a spirit of a fisherman who died at sea, and is now seeking revenge on those who cross its path. Others say that it is a demon shark that has been sent to torment the living. Whatever the truth may be, the ghost shark is a fearsome creature that should be avoided at all costs. Once upon a time, there was a village that was terrorized by a huge, ferocious hyena. The villagers were terrified of the hyena, and did everything they could to avoid it. One day, the hyena came into the village and killed a man. The villagers were so scared that they decided to offer the hyena a sacrificial victim every month. They would choose one person to be the sacrificial victim, and the hyena would take them away and kill them. This went on for many years, until one day the villagers ran out of people to sacrifice. The hyena was so angry that it came into the village and killed everyone it could find. The village was destroyed, and the hyena was never seen again. The spooky squirrel was always watching. No matter where you went in the house, you could feel its beady little eyes following you. It was always there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce. One day, you decided enough was enough. You were going to get rid of that damn squirrel once and for all. You set a trap, and sure enough, the squirrel fell for it. You caught it, and you were going to make it pay. You took it out into the woods, far away from the safety of its home. You tied it to a tree, and you left it there to die. But the squirrel was not going to go down without a fight. It fought and fought, until it finally managed to escape. And now it's coming back for you. You can hear its footsteps in the hallway, getting closer and closer to your bedroom. You're trapped, and there's nowhere to hide. The door bursts open, and the squirrel is there, standing over you, baring its teeth. You're going to die. Deep in the heart of the jungle, there lurks a creature that is feared by all who know of it. The creepy chameleon is a master of disguise, able to change its appearance to match its surroundings. It stalks its prey through the trees, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When the sun sets, the creepy chameleon comes out to hunt. It is attracted to the light, and will follow it until it finds its prey. When it is close enough, it will strike, injecting its victim with a paralyzing venom. The victim will be paralyzed, and at the mercy of the creepy chameleon. The creepy chameleon will then devour its victim alive, starting with the eyes and working its way down. The victim will be conscious the entire time, and will feel every bit of pain as the creepy chameleon eats them alive. If you find yourself in the jungle at night, beware of the creepy chameleon. It is a ruthless predator that will not hesitate to kill and eat you alive. One evening, a family of gorillas was sitting around their campfire, enjoying the warmth and each other's company. Suddenly, they heard a strange noise coming from the bushes. At first, they thought it was just an animal, but then they saw a ghostly figure emerge from the shadows. The gorillas were terrified and ran away as fast as they could. The next day, they returned to their camp to find that the ghost had left a message for them. It said, "I will haunt you forever." The family was so scared that they moved to a new forest and never looked back. The possessed octopus was swimming aimlessly through the dark waters, its 8 tentacles flailing about wildly. It was as if the octopus was in a trance, and it was clear that something was controlling it. The octopus came upon a small boat and began to attack it, its tentacles smashing through the hull. The people on board were screaming in terror as the octopus destroyed their boat, and they were soon engulfed by the dark waters. There was no escape for them from the possessed octopus. The cursed tarantula was once a normal spider that lived in the forest, but one day, it was bitten by a venomous snake, and the venom transformed the spider into a creature of pure evil. The tarantula now lurks in the shadows, waiting to pounce on its unsuspecting victims. It is said that the tarantula's bite is fatal. and that its venom turns its victims into spiders themselves. The cursed tarantula is a feared creature, and few dare to venture into the forest where it lives. Once upon a time, there was a cheetah who was infected with a zombie virus. The cheetah became a zombie and began to hunt for human flesh. The cheetah was very fast and agile, and it soon began to feast on the flesh of humans. The cheetah became a feared predator, and people began to avoid it. The cheetah continued to hunt and kill humans, and its reputation began to grow. People began to call it the zombie cheetah. The zombie cheetah became a legend, and people were afraid of it. The eerie elephant slowly made its way through the dense jungle, its trunk outstretched, its trunk wrinkled from the humidity. It was as if the elephant was searching for something, or someone. Suddenly, the elephant stopped and raised its trunk into the air. Sniffing the air, it had picked up a scent. The elephant began to follow the scent. Its trunk wrinkled in concentration. The scent led the elephant to a small clearing in the jungle. In the clearing was a small hut. The elephant approached the hut cautiously, its trunk outstretched. The door to the hut opened and a small child came out. The child was barefoot and wore tattered clothes. The child looked up at the elephant and smiled. The elephant felt a sense of relief and lowered its trunk. It was as if the child was a lost friend. But then the child's smile turned into a wicked grin. The child raised its hands and began to chant in a strange language. The elephant felt a sudden sense of fear. It tried to run, but it was too late. The child had cast a spell and the elephant was frozen in place. The child began to laugh maniacally as it approached the elephant. The elephant tried to scream, but no sound would come out. The child reached up and touched the elephant's trunk. A shock of electricity coursed through the elephant's body. The elephant felt its life force being sucked out of it. The child kept touching the elephant's trunk, draining its life force. The elephant's body began to sag. Its trunk drooped. Its eyes dulled. The child kept touching the elephant until it was nothing more than a shell of its former self. Then the child stopped and walked away, leaving the elephant's lifeless body behind. The ghost of a python haunts a small town in the middle of nowhere. The townsfolk have all heard the stories about the ghost python, but no one knows for sure if it exists. One night, a group of teenagers decide to go out to the old abandoned house where the ghost is said to live. As they enter the house, they see a large python coiled up in the corner. The python begins to speak to them in a haunting voice, telling them to leave the house immediately. The teenagers are so scared that they run out of the house and never come back. The howling hippo was a terrible, monstrous beast that terrorized the villagers for years. No one knew where it came from, but it would often appear in the night, howling and causing havoc. It would kill livestock and sometimes even people. The villagers were terrified of it and did everything they could to avoid it. One night, the howling hippo came into the village and started killing people. The villagers were helpless against it. They tried to fight back, but it was too strong. It seemed like nothing could stop it. Then, one day, a brave villager decided to stand up to the howling hippo. He confronted it with a spear and managed to kill it. The village was saved and the people were finally able to live in peace. It was a dark and stormy night. Philip had been driving home from work, and was now about an hour away from his house. He had made it the last few miles, but was now in the throes of a full-blown panic attack. His breaths came in short gasps and his heart was pounding so hard. It felt like it was trying to escape his chest. He pulled to the side of the road, scattering gravel, and tried to calm himself. He closed his eyes and took several deep breaths before starting the car. He crept along the road, his car the only light in a wide and dark world. The rain continued to beat against the windshield like the footsteps of some unseen thing. Suddenly, Philip's car was bathed in light. He squinted against the brightness and saw that he was now surrounded by a ring of large, black SUVs. Men in black suits and sunglasses stood outside, their faces hidden in the shadows. Philip's heart sank as he realized he was being abducted by aliens. He tried to start the car, but it was like it was frozen. He was trapped. The men approached the car and opened the door. Philip was dragged out, kicking and screaming. He tried to fight, but it was futile. He was thrown into the back of one of the SUVs and the door was slammed shut. The last thing he saw was the men in black suits getting into their cars and driving away, leaving him alone in the dark. Philip awoke some time later. He was disoriented and had no idea where he was. He was lying on a cold, hard surface. He tried to sit up, but his head hit something hard. He was in some kind of box. He started to panic and bang on the lid of the box, but it was no use. He was trapped. He didn't know how long he was in there, but eventually he started to hear voices. They were muffled at first, but gradually they became clearer. He could make out the words, food, and water. He was being discussed like he was a piece of meat. He banged on the lid of the box again, but the voices just continued to talk over him. Then the lid of the box was opened and bright light flooded in, momentarily blinding him. The creepy crocodile was once a normal, everyday crocodile. But one day, something happened that changed everything. The crocodile was lying in the sun, minding its own business, when a dark shadow fell over it. The crocodile looked up to see a huge, menacing bird looming above it. The bird attacked the crocodile, sinking its sharp talons into the crocodile's flesh. The crocodile fought back, but it was no match for the bird. The bird pecked and tore at the crocodile until it was nothing but a bloody mess. The crocodile lay there, dying, when it suddenly felt something strange happening to its body. The crocodile's wounds began to heal, and its strength started to return. The crocodile got to its feet and looked around, dazed and confused. It was then that the crocodile realized that it had become something else. something dark and sinister. The crocodile had become a creepy crocodile. The creepy crocodile now spends its days lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce on its unsuspecting prey. It is a ruthless killer, and it will stop at nothing to get what it wants. The creepy crocodile is a feared and respected creature, and it is not to be trifled with. Beware the creepy crocodile, for it is a creature of nightmares. The ghostly jellyfish are said to be the souls of those who have drowned at sea. They are said to be able to lure their victims into the water with their beautiful glow, before dragging them down to a watery grave. Some say that they are the spirits of those who have been lost at sea, haunting the living and seeking revenge. Others say that they are nothing more than urban legends, created to scare people away from the water. But whatever you believe, one thing is for sure. The ghostly jellyfish are nothing to mess with. They say that on calm, moonless nights, you can see them floating just below the surface of the water, their eerie glow beckoning you closer. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself being pulled under, never to be seen again. So beware the next time you're out on the water, and keep an eye out for the ghostly jellyfish. You never know when they might be lurking, waiting to claim another victim. The possessed ostrich was a sight to behold. It was huge, and its eyes were glowing red. It seemed to be foaming at the mouth, and it was making a strange, guttural noise. The sight of it was enough to send anyone running in terror. The possessed ostrich had been terrorizing the small town for weeks. No one knew where it had come from, but it seemed to be hell-bent on destruction. It had already killed several people, and it showed no signs of stopping. The townspeople were desperate, and they knew that something had to be done. They decided to call in the help of a priest. The priest came and blessed the ostrich, but it only made it angrier. It attacked the priest, and it looked like it was about to kill him. The townspeople were terrified, and they knew that they had to do something. They decided to call in a group of hunters. The hunters came and tried to shoot the ostrich, but it was too fast. They chased it for hours, but they couldn't seem to catch it. The ostrich was getting more and more aggressive, and it seemed like it was going to kill someone else. The townspeople were at their wits' end. They didn't know what to do. They were about to give up hope when they heard a strange noise. It sounded like someone was singing. They followed the noise, and they found a woman. She was singing a strange song, and she was holding a strange object in her hand. The woman walked up to the ostrich, and it stopped attacking. It just stood there, and it seemed to be listening to the woman. The woman sang her song, and the ostrich slowly started to change. Its eyes stopped glowing, and the foam around its mouth disappeared. It was no longer the possessed creature that it had been. The townspeople were amazed. They didn't know what to say. The woman had saved them, and they would be forever grateful. The cursed grizzly bear. It was a dark and stormy night. Philip had been driving home from work, and was now about an hour away from his house. He had made it the last few miles, but was now in the throes of a full-blown panic attack. His breaths came in short gasps and his heart was pounding so hard. It felt like it was trying to escape his chest. He pulled to the side of the road, scattering gravel, and tried to calm himself. He closed his eyes and took several deep breaths before starting the car. He crept along the road, his car the only light in a wide and dark world. The rain continued to beat against the windshield like the footsteps of some unseen thing. Suddenly, Philip's car was thrust forward and he was thrown against his seatbelt. The impact knocked the wind out of him and he sat for a moment, dazed. His car had hit something, but he couldn't see what it was. He turned on his high beams and got out of the car. He could see tire marks in the mud leading off the road. He followed them until he came to a large object lying in the ditch. As he got closer, he could see that it was a bear. A very large bear. He approached cautiously, but the bear was clearly dead. It must have been hit by a car. He felt a sudden wave of relief and his panic began to dissipate. He turned to go back to his car, but something caught his eye. The bear's eyes were open and they were staring right at him. Philip froze, his blood turning to ice in his veins. The bear's eyes seemed to bore into him, and he felt a sudden urge to run. He turned and fled back to his car, his heart pounding in his ears. He scrambled into the car and slammed the door shut, locking it. He sat for a moment, trying to calm his racing heart. He turned on the car and pulled back onto the road. He drove slowly, his eyes darting around, searching for any sign of the bear. He didn't see it, but he could feel its eyes on him, following him through the darkness. The zombie pangolin was once a harmless creature, but now it is a fearsome monster. It wanders the earth, looking for innocent victims to devour. Its eyes are blood red, and its mouth is full of sharp teeth. It is a relentless hunter, and will not stop until it has devoured every last person on earth. The zombie pangolin is a fearsome creature that should be avoided at all costs. If you see one, run for your life. It is a merciless hunter, and will not hesitate to kill you. Eerie emu. The eerie emu stood in the middle of the room, its beady eyes staring at the intruders. It was a dark, moonless night, and the only light in the room came from a single candle. The emu didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just stood there, watching. The intruders were two young women, barely out of their teens. They had broken into the house hoping to find something to steal. But they hadn't expected to find this. The emu seemed to be waiting for something, but the girls didn't know what. They were frozen in place, too scared to move. Suddenly, the emu lunged forward, its beak open wide. The girls screamed and ran for the door, but they weren't fast enough. The emu caught them both and devoured them whole. Now, the emu stood in the room once again, its belly full. It would wait for its next meal, patiently, until the right time came. The ghost eagle was once a proud and mighty bird, soaring through the skies with grace and power. But now, it is a creature of the night, a fearsome predator that stalks the dark forests in search of prey. It is said that the ghost eagle can kill with just a glance, and that its cries can freeze the blood in your veins. If you hear the ghost eagle's call, beware, for you may be its next victim. The howling hammerhead shark is a fearsome creature of the deep, a monstrous beast that strikes fear into the hearts of all who see it. It is a giant of the sea, a beast that is as long as a school bus and as wide as a car. Its teeth are sharp as daggers, and its eyes seem to glow with a sinister intelligence. The howling hammerhead shark is a predator of the highest order, a creature that will stop at nothing to devour its prey. The howling hammerhead shark is a creature that is rarely seen by humans. But when it is always a terrifying sight. The howling hammerhead shark is a creature that preys on the weak and the innocent, and it will not hesitate to kill anyone who gets in its way. The howling hammerhead shark is a ruthless killer, and it is not to be trifled with. If you see the howling hammerhead shark, you should run for your life, because it is sure to kill you. Stingrays are one of the most feared creatures in the ocean. They are known for their deadly venom and their ability to kill with a single sting. But there is something even more deadly about stingrays. Something that makes them even more feared than their venom. Stingrays are known to be able to kill with a single sting. But there have been reports of something even more deadly. Something that can kill with a single touch. There have been reports of a creature that is half stingray, half human. A creature that is able to transform itself into a human form. This creature is known as the Stingray Man. The Stingray Man is a creature of the night. It prowls the oceans in search of prey. It is attracted to the smell of blood and the sound of screams. It is a ruthless killer that will stop at nothing to satisfy its hunger. The Stingray Man is a legend among sailors. A legend that is said to be true. A legend that is said to be real. As you tuck yourself into bed, you see a movement out of the corner of your eye. You slowly turn your head to see a large, creepy centipede making its way across the floor. You watch in horror as it gets closer and closer to your bed, until it finally crawls up onto your mattress. You try to scream, but it's too late. The centipede has already bitten you, injecting its venom into your system. You feel your body start to go numb, and you know that